Part 1, The Masks We Wear, The Truth Behind the Smile. A chill down your spine. Have you ever felt a shiver crawl up your spine when someone smiled at you, but their eyes were empty, like a black hole swallowing the light? I have. It was a rainy afternoon when I met an old friend after years apart. He hugged me tight, his smile bright as sunshine, his voice dripping with honey. "Man, I've missed you so much." I smiled back, my heart warming up like a cozy fire. But something felt off. His eyes darted away, like he was already planning his escape while his mouth kept chattering. I told myself, nah, I'm just imagining it. 2 months later, I found out he'd been spilling my secrets behind my back, turning me into a laughingstock. That smile wasn't light, it was a trap. Robert Greene, a guy who's dodged more snakes than most of us can count, would have smirked at my naivety. He says, "We all wear masks, not to shield ourselves, but to control others." And he's right. Picture this. You walk into a room, people clap and cheer, but deep down you know some are sharpening knives behind your back. It's not paranoia, it's human nature. Greene, the man behind the laws of human nature, spent his life peeling back those fake layers. He warns, we're born actors. From a 3-year-old whining for candy to a boss grinning while plotting your exit, we're all playing a game. The truth isn't in words, it's in the quick tilt of a head, the flicker of an eye, the smile that never reaches the soul. Do you dare peek deeper, or will you stay prey in a play someone else directs? The truth behind the mask. Who are we really? Robert Greene wasn't always a master of human nature. Before the 48 Laws of Power, he was a nobody. No power, no cash, no hope. He bounced through odd jobs, waiting tables, scribbling scripts in Hollywood, just scraping by. "I was a failure," he admits in the interview, his voice heavy with old scars. "I had nothing until I saw the brutal truth. Life isn't about fairness or hard work. It's a social jungle where the clueless get crushed. Imagine you're a lone wolf in the wild. You're great at hunting, fast on your feet, but you don't know how to read the pack. Sooner or later you'll starve, not because you're weak, but because you're blind to the others." Greene learned this the hard way. He talks about the early days of writing when strangers started asking him for advice. Him, a guy who'd been nothing. "It shocked me," he says, a faint chuckle in his tone. "But I saw a pattern. We live in a tech-crazy world where everything's easy, but we've lost the knack for figuring people out. We think we're good with folks, but we're stumbling in the dark. Ever wonder why that coworker who always praises you steals your thunder in front of the boss? Or why your best buddy goes quiet when you need them most? It's because they're wearing masks, and you haven't learned to see through them." Greene calls it the dance of masks. Every day we step out playing the part of the nice guy, the smart one, the loyal friend. But what's underneath? Jealousy simmering low, ambition creeping silent, knives waiting for the right moment. "We don't speak the truth," Greene insists. "We perform. And if you don't catch the act, you're the only one who doesn't know the ending." Why we wear masks, survival's little game. So why do we live like this? Why can't we just rip off the masks and be real? Greene's got an answer that hits hard. It's how we survive. Think of a 3-year-old kid. They cry, they pout, they flash a sugary smile. Not because they adore you, but because they want that candy in your hand. Kids are already actors, he says. They figure out how to tweak their voice, throw a tantrum, get what they're after. We're no different, just slicker at it. Picture yourself at a party. You meet someone new, they grin, ask about your job, seem all ears. But when you turn away, they whisper to the guy next to them, "He's nothing special." You don't hear it, but you feel it. The chill in the air, the sting in your chest. That's the mask slipping just for a second. Greene says we wear masks because the truth is too risky. Tell your boss you hate him and you're fired. Tell your friend you're jealous and the friendship's toast. Society's a stage and we've got to play our roles to make it through. But here's the kicker. We don't just fool others, we fool ourselves. We buy into our own masks, Greene explains. We convince ourselves we're good, we're smart, we're honest, but it's just paint over the animal inside. Ever wonder who you really are when no one's watching? When the curtains drop? That's the question Greene forces you to face, and it's scarier than any snake out there. Tools to see through the mask. Don't lose hope. Greene doesn't just expose the lies, he hands you weapons to survive. The secret? Truth isn't spoken, it's shown. Words are the easiest to fake, he says, but the body can't lie. Imagine you're chatting with someone, they say, "I'm so happy for you." But their hands clench, their shoulders stiffen, their eyes don't meet yours. That's the truth, not the words, but the signals they can't hide. He calls them micro-expressions, or tiny flashes faster than a blink that spill the beans. Science backs it up, Greene says. They last less than a second, but if you know how to look, you see everything. A fake smile curls the lips, but leaves the eyes cold. A wandering gaze hints at betrayal brewing. A shaky voice rings. The alarm on your trust. Try this. Picture someone you're not sure about, a coworker maybe. Instead of confronting them straight on, which just makes the mask tighter, Greene suggests a sneak attack. Catch them off guard, he says. Come at them from an angle, ask something unexpected, and watch that first reaction. I did this once. I strolled up to a teammate's desk, casual as can be. "Hey, heard any news lately?" For a split second, his eyes widened, his lips pressed tight. Panic. 2 days later, I learned he'd applied for a promotion behind my back, even though we were a team. Greene's right. The body doesn't lie. We just trick ourselves into ignoring. It's signs you can't ignore, so how do you spot a mask in real life? Greene gives you 3 big tools: eyes, voice, and smile. Eyes, the window that can't hide. Eyes are the toughest to fake, he insists. Someone looks at you but isn't really seeing you. What's on their mind? I recall meeting a potential investor. "I'm excited about your project," he said, but his eyes were dull, like he was staring past me to something else. A week later, he bailed with no explanation. Greene says, narcissists and liars have dead eyes. They see you as a tool, not a person. Voice. The echo of truth. Even the best actors struggle to fake a voice, he shares. A trembling tone, a stammer, or a too smooth delivery. They're red flags. I heard a friend apologize once. "I didn't mean to upset you," but her voice pitched high like she was convincing herself. Later, I found out she'd spread rumors on purpose. Listen, not to the words, but how they're said. Smile. A double-edged blade. A real smile lights up the whole face, Greene describes. A fake one's just a mouth moving, eyes staying icy. Think of the last smile you got. Did it warm you or chill you? I got one from a manager. Great job. But his eyes didn't budge. A month later, I was replaced. No warning. Living in a world of masks, seeing through masks, doesn't mean you turn into a bitter skeptic. Greene's not telling you to distrust everyone. He's telling you to wake up. We need masks to keep society running, he says. If everyone spoke the raw truth, the world would collapse tomorrow. Imagine telling your boss, "I despise you," or your friend, "I'm jealous of you." Life would be a battlefield, not because truth is ugly, but because we're too fragile to handle it. But waking up doesn't mean sitting still. Greene pushes you to play the game, not to hurt, but to protect. Be an actor, he says, but one who knows the other guy's script. When I caught on, I shifted. Instead of swallowing every compliment, I watched. Instead of jumping at every apology, I waited for proof. The payoff? Less hurt, less fooled. And the big win? I started seeing the truth, not in what's said, but in what's left unsaid. Closing. Are you ready to see through the masks? Think of the last smile. You got, was it real? Or did you just want it to be so you wouldn't have to face the gut punch that someone's playing with your trust? Greene says living blind to masks is locking yourself in the dark. You don't have to suspect everyone, but you've got to look deeper. I used to fall for fake smiles until I learned to spot them. Now I don't just survive, I run the show. What about you? Will you stay the audience or grab the script? Question for you. Who in your life is wearing a mask you haven't dared to peel off? That coworker who's all praise or the friend who's too quiet? Face that doubt. The truth's worth more than fake comfort. Take action now. In the next 24 hours, talk to someone you're unsure about. Don't just hear their words, watch their eyes. Jot down how it feels in a notebook. The truth will start creeping out. Part 2. The blind spot of success. Why you fail with people's success is a lie. If you don't get people, have you ever poured your heart out, worked your fingers to the bone, believing effort would carry you to the top, only to crash hard because someone you trusted stabbed you in the back? I have. I was 25, grinding like a beast on a startup project, dreaming it'd be my golden ticket. I was good, sharp with plans, quick with numbers, always on time. But one morning I found out my partner, the guy I called a brother, had secretly sold my idea to another company. He laughed over the phone. Don't be mad, it's just business. I wasn't mad. I was broken. I'd done everything right, so why did I still lose? Robert Greene, a man who went from failure to a master of human nature, has an answer that stopped my heart cold. Success isn't just hard work, it's understanding people. I saw folks with a deadly blind spot. They're great at their job but awful with others. Picture yourself as a lone wolf in the woods. Killer at hunting but clueless about the pack. Sooner or later you're dead, not from lack of skill but from not seeing the others. Greene didn't just talk it. He lived it through pain to prove it. Do you dare peek at your own blind spot? Or will you keep blaming fate, the world, anyone but yourself? What's the blind spot? The invisible enemy. Inside you, Greene wasn't always the guru he is now. Before the 48 laws of power, he was a nobody. No power, no money, no dreams left. He drifted through jobs, waiting tables, scribbling cheap scripts, barely hanging on. I was a failure, he confesses in the interview, his voice thick with the weight of those days. I had zilch until I faced a bitter truth. We live in a world where tech gives us everything, but we've lost the art of reading people. Stop for a sec and think, how good are you at what you do? You crank out reports fast, nail deadlines, come up with ideas that make jaws drop. But then what? Coworkers turn their backs, your boss doubts you, friends vanish when you're down. That's the blind spot, the hidden hole Greene says most of us never see. People think if they hustle hard, success is theirs, he says. But I kept watching them slam into a wall. They don't get others, so they get played, hurt, left behind. I remember staring in the mirror after that betrayal. Where'd I mess up? I asked myself. I'd done it all by the book, all logical. But I missed his shifty eyes when he said, "We're a team." I didn't catch the tremble in his voice when he swore, "I've got your back." I was ace at my work but blind to people. Greene says we think we know folks, but we're groping in the dark. Do you see your blind spot yet? Or are you still pointing fingers at everyone else? The journey to self-awareness, facing the mirror. Greene doesn't just point out the blind spot. He makes you stare it down in the mirror. Step 1 to beating it is admitting you're bad at reading people, he says, his voice firm like a judge's gavel. We think it's natural. I'm human, I get people. Nope, you don't. Imagine you're at a job interview. The person across from you smiles, nods, but you don't notice their hands clenching under the table, or the slight squeak in their voice when they say, "We're impressed." You walk out thinking you nailed it, only to get a cold rejection. Email the next day. You wonder, what did I do wrong? It's not what you did, it's what you didn't see. Greene talks about his own gut-wrenching journey writing The Laws of Human Nature. I was working on the narcissism chapter, he says, and I had to admit, I'm a narcissist. I love talking about myself, thinking I'm special, facing. That hurt, but it's the only way to understand others. I tried the mirror trick after hearing him. I thought back to times I cut off friends to ramble about me, times I ignored what they said because I thought I had them figured out. I wasn't. Listening, I was performing, and that's why I didn't see what they really felt. Greene says, "You're the best case study for human nature. Look at yourself before you blame anyone else." Ever ask yourself where you're bad at reading people, or are you still playing the victim? Why we're blind, trapped in a cage so. Why do we have this blind spot? Greene's got an answer that chills you because we're stuck in a glass cage. We're glued to screens, he says. 95% of our time it's texts, emails, social media. We don't see bodies, hear voices, feel vibes. Our knack for getting people is dying out. Think of the last time you texted someone. They say, "I'm fine, thanks." You buy it? I did, until I met that friend face to face and saw red eyes, a shaky voice. They weren't fine, but I couldn't tell through a screen. Greene says, sit across from someone, you catch their body language, their tone, their real self. Behind a screen, you're blind. I started replaying my text mix-ups. A coworker wrote, "Awesome, thanks." I thought they were happy, until I saw their sour face and flat voice in person. I got it wrong because I didn't see. Greene hammers it home. Tech gives us power, but steals the eyes of our soul. Are you living in your own glass cage, or are you ready to step out and look? Tools to wipe out the blind spot. Don't freak out. Greene doesn't just show the problem, he gives you the fix. It all starts with knowing yourself, he says. Get down on your knees and admit, I'm not good with people. Picture yourself as an astronaut lost on a strange planet. You've got a map, but it's wrong. You'll die unless you redraw it. Your blind spot's the same. A busted map of people, and you've got to sketch it anew by watching yourself. Greene suggests, look back at your screw-ups. When's the last time you misread someone? What did it cost you? I did this once. I thought of a fight with a friend. I figured she was mad because I showed up late, so I said sorry. But she stayed quiet, turned away. Later, I found out she was hurt because I didn't check in after her breakup. I read her wrong, not her fault, but mine for not digging deeper. Greene says, mistakes are your best teachers. Review them and you'll spot your blind spot. Next, he says, learn to listen, not to words, but to what's unsaid. I tried it in a meeting. My boss said, everything's fine, keep going. But his fingers tapped the table, his eyes flicked to the door. I asked, you sure? Anything I should tweak? He sighed. Actually, redo the report. If I hadn't looked, I'd have flopped. Greene's right. The truth hides in what's not spoken. Stepping out of the dark, getting the blind spot isn't instant magic. It's a trek. Greene admits, I still mess up. I misread people, hurt them without meaning to. But I learn from the pain. I started shifting after hearing him. Instead of diving into work like a robot, I paused and watched. When a coworker praised me, I checked their eyes, real or fake. When friends shared stories, I tuned into their voice. Happy or sad? The payoff? Less tricked, less burned. I wasn't a lone wolf anymore. I learned to run with the pack. But the biggest thing Greene taught me is you don't have to be perfect right away. Everyone can get better at reading people, he says. You just have to start looking. Are you ready to step out of the dark? Or will you stay blind and let others call the shots? Closing. Don't let the blind spot ruin you. When Greene stared in the mirror and saw a self-absorbed guy, he didn't run. He faced it. What about you? Can you admit you're lousy at reading people? Success doesn't wait for the emotionally blind. I thought I was good until betrayal knocked me flat. Now I watch, I listen, I survive. You don't have to be a pro today, but you've got to start. Question for you. When's the last time you misread someone, and what did it take from you? A chance, a friendship, just your trust? Face that sting. It's the key to seeing clear. Take action now. In the next 24 hours, watch someone you see a lot. Coworker, friend, family. Ask yourself, what do they really want from me? Don't guess from words. Look at their eyes. Hear their voice, feel their vibe. Write it down. You'll be shocked at how blind you've been. Part 3. The darkness. Inside. Facing the monster in you. The monster you don't dare face. Have you ever woken up in the dead of night, soaked in cold sweat, heart pounding from a dream so dark you wouldn't dare tell a soul? I have. In that dream, I was standing in front of a crowd, laughing and chatting like normal. Then I turned around and saw myself, but not the me I know. This version had blood-red eyes, a twisted grin, hands clenched like they wanted to strangle someone. I screamed, but no one heard. They kept clapping, smiling, as if that monster was the real me. When I woke up, I told myself, it's just a dream. But deep down, I knew it wasn't just a dream. It was the darkness inside me, the part I've buried for years. Robert Greene, who stared down his own monster while writing the laws of human nature, says we all have a dark side, a wild beast chained up by our polite masks. People think they're good, saintly, he shares in the interview, his voice low and haunting. But inside you is an animal, hungry, jealous, fierce. If you don't face it, it'll rip you apart from within. Picture yourself as a kid, a perfect little ball of light and shadow. Life made you slice off that shadow, shove it deep down, but it's still there. It growls, it waits, and if you don't dare look at it, it'll swallow you whole. Do you have the guts to face the monster in you, or will you keep running, pretending it's not real? Where the darkness comes from. A ball cut in half green doesn't just talk, he paints the roots of your darkness with a picture that chills you. When you're 3 or 4, you're a whole ball, he explains. You're loving, you're sweet, but you're also wild. You get jealous, you lash out. That's you, raw and complete. I think back to my childhood. I shoved my little brother once because he nabbed my favorite toy, yelled at my mom when she wouldn't give me ice cream. I wasn't evil, I was human. But then what happened? Life cuts that ball in two, Greene goes on. Your parents say be nice, school drills manners into you, the world forces you to smile even when you want to scream. The darkness gets stuffed down, buried, but it doesn't die. Imagine you're the moon. One half glows bright under the sun, the other sinks into cold shadow. Out in the world you flash that bright side, the polite grin, the kind words, the nod of agreement. But the dark half's still there, lurking in the corners of your soul. I used to think I was a good guy. I helped friends, worked hard, tried to be decent. But then one day I caught myself growling inside when a coworker got promoted over me. She doesn't deserve it, I fumed, jealousy burning like a wildfire in my chest. I froze. Who am I? Greene answers. You're not special. We all have darkness. It's from our ancient roots, our survival instincts. Ever feel that fire? Jealousy, anger, selfishness? Or are you still pretending you're an angel when the darkness explodes? Blow-ups you didn't see coming. The scariest part isn't that the darkness exists. It's that it can burst out any time. Greene says, you try to choke it down, but it slips free. In an angry email, a nasty jab, something you didn't plan. I remember blasting a friend with a mean text. You're always showing off. I sent it in a rage, then regretted it instantly. That's not me, I told myself. But Greene cuts in, yeah it is, that's your darkness talking. Picture yourself driving, someone cuts you off and you yell, idiot. In that flash, you're not the polite you, you're the beast. Greene calls it the darkness, blowing up. You don't see it because you don't know it's there, he explains. Then it hits and you're ashamed, wondering, where'd that come from? I started replaying my own explosions. The time I snapped at my mom for asking too much. The time I went silent when friends needed me, just because I envied their joy. Each time I excused it. I was tired, but Greene won't let you off. Don't blame the moment. It's you, the part you won't own. Ever blow up and not know why? Or do you still think it's someone else's fault? Why we fear facing it, hiding from the truth. If darkness is so natural, why do we run from it? Greene's got an answer that hits you cold. Because we don't want to know who we really are. He quotes Anton Chekhov. People can't change until they know themselves. But knowing yourself hurts. We love thinking we're the good guy, Greene says. The problem's always them. They're mean, they're jealous, they're wrong. Me? I'm pure, I'm moral, I'm smart. I live that way. When my partner betrayed me, I blamed him. He's a snake. But then I wondered, why didn't I see it coming? Why'd I trust him blind? Greene made me dig deeper. Because you didn't want to see your own darkness, your naivety, your smugness, your laziness at reading people. Facing the dark is facing the truth. You're not perfect, you're not a saint, you're an animal. Like the rest of us. Imagine standing in front of a mirror, not to check your looks, but your soul. What do you see? A kind person, or a quiet envier, a strong one, or a coward scared to fail? Greene says, we fear it because we think we're different, but you're not. You're human with all the light and shadow that comes with it. Dare to look in that mirror, or will you keep playing the angel until the dark eats you alive? Facing and owning it, turning darkness into power, but this isn't about despair. It's about power. Greene doesn't tell you to kill your darkness. He tells you to tame it. The dark's got energy, he says. Raw, wild strength. Don't toss it, use it. Think of Greene. He owns up to being fierce, competitive, hating to lose, even at cards. Instead of shame, he fuels it. I pour that fire into my books, he says. I want them to be the best, to crush the competition. I thought about myself. I hate losing too, from ping pong to arguments. I used to beat myself up. Why so petty? But Greene flipped it. It's not petty, it's fire, run with it. I gave it a shot. Next time I got jealous of a coworker's praise, instead of sulking, I told myself, use it. I worked double, polished my project, and outdid them. The darkness wasn't my enemy. It was my ally. Greene suggests, if you're mad at injustice, don't whine, act. If you're fierce, don't hit people, hit your goals. Ever think your darkness could be strength? Or do you still see it as something to hide? Tools to face it. How do you start? Greene lays out 3 simple, gut-punching steps. Look in the mirror. Dig up the moments you hate yourself, he says. When you're jealous, mad, selfish, that's the dark. I listed mine. Envying, my best friend. Snapping at my partner, dodging help because I was tired. It stung, but it was real. Except don't judge. Don't kick yourself, he stresses. You're not bad, you're human. I stopped saying I'm a jerk. Instead, I thought, I've got fire and I'll use it. Channel the energy. Find a way to turn the dark into action, he urges. I took my anger from a job rejection and learned a new skill. Landed a better gig. Picture yourself as a blacksmith. Your darkness is rough steel, hot, dangerous, but if you know how, you'll forge it into a sharp blade. Greene says, facing your dark is the best thing ever. It frees you from faking. Ready to forge your blade? Closing. The monsters. And that's okay. When Greene wrote about his darkness, he didn't bolt. He embraced it. I'm an animal, he says, and I'm cool with that. You? Dare to face your monster? I used to fear it. Fear the jealousy, the rage, the ugly thoughts. But when I looked, I didn't scare. I grew stronger. The dark's not your foe, it's power you haven't tapped. You don't need to be an angel, just real. Question for you. What's your darkness? Jealousy, anger, fear? When's the last time it flared up and what did you do with it? Face it. It's how you own yourself. Take action. Now. In the next 24 hours, write down one time you felt bad, jealous, mad, selfish. Don't judge, just note it. Then ask, how can I use this energy for something good? Try it once. You'll see the monster's not so scary. Part 4. The war with yourself. Breaking free from the prison of the past. The prison you built. Have you ever felt trapped in an invisible cage, every step heavy like you're dragging chains? But when you look around, there's no bars. Just you? I have. I was 28, stuck in a steady office job, paycheck decent, friends saying, "You've got it made." But every morning I woke up with an ache in my chest like someone had carved out my heart. I hated that job. The pointless meetings, the fake smiles for the boss, the desk drowning in papers. But I didn't quit. Why? Fear. Fear of failing. Fear of judgment. Fear I wasn't good enough to try something else. I'd locked myself in a prison of the past, a version of me I didn't even recognize anymore. Robert Greene, who smashed his own jail to become the author of the 48 Laws of Power, says we're our own worst jailers. You're stuck in the you others pinned on you, he shares in the interview, his voice deep and haunting. They tell you who you are and you buy it, but that's not the real you. Picture yourself as a lump of clay. Life molds you into one shape, but inside, you know you could be something bigger, stronger, freer. To break out, you've got to shatter that old statue, and it hurts more than any fight out there. Do you dare declare war on yourself, or will you stay a prisoner of yesterday forever? How the Prison Gets Built. Invisible Chains. Greene wasn't always free. Before his books, he was a failure. No power, no money, no hope. He bounced through jobs. Waiting tables, writing cheap scripts, scraping by. I was trapped, he admits. I thought I was just a nobody, nothing more. Then he saw it. The prison wasn't his situation. It was how he saw himself. Think about you. Who told you who you are? Parents saying you need to play it safe? Friends laughing when you dream big? Society labeling you office worker, average, not good enough? I remember my mom saying, "Stick with this job, honey, safe is best." I listened, and every day, I felt smaller, like a bird in a cage, wings shrinking from never flying. Greene calls it the prison of identity. Others define you, he says, and you let them, because changing feels scarier than dying. I looked back. As a kid, I dreamed of being an artist, painting stories of my own. But my teacher said art won't pay the bills. Friends mocked, "You draw like that and think you're an artist?" I believed them, and I gave up. I locked myself into a safe, tiny version, not because I wanted to, but because I was afraid. Greene says you're not stuck in a job, a relationship, or a situation. You're stuck in the past others wrote for you. Do you see your chains, or do you still think you're free? The cost of the prison, the life you lose. Staying locked up comes with a price, and it's steeper than you think. Greene talks about Andrew Huberman, a brain scientist at Stanford with everything, a big job, money, a bright future. But he was miserable. He hated the politics of academia, the fakeness, Greene says. He was trapped in an identity others gave him, a successful professor. If Huberman hadn't read Greene's Mastery and Broken Free, he'd still be a walking shell, rich but empty. I felt that cost myself. Every day at work, my body got heavier, shoulders aching, head throbbing, heart numb. I told myself, just a few more years, then I'll change. But Greene warns, when you're not true to yourself, your body betrays you. High blood pressure, back pain, a soul dying slow, all because you won't break out. I saw it. I wasn't just losing my dreams, I was losing me. Imagine you're old, rocking in a chair, looking back. What do you see? Someone who lived their way, or a ghost caged by fear? Greene says, when death comes, the worst pain isn't what you did, it's what you didn't dare. Ever feel yourself dying slow in your own prison, or do you still think steady is enough? Declaring war on yourself, smashing the old statue. But this isn't a tale of defeat. It's about winning. Greene doesn't just show you the prison. He hands you a hammer to bust it. You've got to remake yourself, he says, his voice roaring like a battle cry. Don't let others define you. Shape yourself into who you want to be. Think of Greene. When the 48 Laws of Power hit big, people boxed him as the dark manipulation guy. He could have stayed there, churning out sequels, a trick pony, for the crowd. But he said no. I didn't do 48 Laws Part 2, he says. I wrote Mastery, then The Laws of Human Nature. Different books because I refused to be caged. He smashed his old statue and molded himself into a writer who couldn't be pinned down. I followed his lead. One day, I sat down and asked, what do I really want? Not the office, not safety. I wanted to paint, to tell stories with a brush. I was terrified, scared of failing, of going broke, of being laughed at. Then I remembered Greene. Listen to your pain. If you're not happy, you've got to change, no matter how scary. I quit my job, bought some paints, and started over. At first, my hands shook, my lines wobbled, but every stroke was a swing at those chains. Ever listen to your own pain? Or are you still plugging your ears to avoid the fight? The power of remaking. Your self-remaking isn't about ditching everything. It's taking back control. Greene tells Huberman's story, from Stanford professor to podcast star, turning science into inspiration for millions. He didn't want to be stuck in academia, Greene says. He remade himself, and won bigger than ever. I felt that power when I started painting. I didn't make much money at first, but I came alive. Each morning I woke up with a spark, no more hollow chest. Greene says, when you break the prison, energy floods in. You feel young again, because you're not locked up. I wasn't that tired 28-year-old anymore. I was new, ready to fly even with shaky wings. Picture yourself as a phoenix. Your old prison's ashes, you've got to burn it to rise. Greene insists, your identity's clay, you're the artist. Don't let others mold you. Dare to torch that old you? Or are you scared the flames will take you down? Tools to break free? How do you start? Greene gives 3 practical, heart-punching steps. Hear your pain. When you're unhappy, don't ignore it, he says. Ask, what's killing me? I wrote it down. The job, the boredom, the fear of failing. It was my map out of the cage. Dream a new you. Picture who you want to be, he urges. I saw myself as an artist, not rich, but free. That vision gave me guts. Take tiny steps. Don't leap all at once, start small, he says. I bought paints, sketched an hour a night after work. Bit by bit, I grew new wings. Think of yourself as a prisoner digging a tunnel. You don't smash the wall, you scoop dirt, patient but fierce. Greene says, breaking free's a war, but the best one you'll fight. Ready to grab your spoon? Closing, smash the chains, be born again. When Greene broke his prison, he didn't just survive, he soared. I wouldn't let others define me, he says. I made me. You dare to battle your past? I was a prisoner of safety once, but when I busted out, I found myself. The prison's not out there, it's in you. Don't wait for someone to unlock it, smash it yourself. You don't need to be great today, but you've got to start. Question for you. What's your prison, your job, your fears, the you others stuck on you? What's making you miserable that you haven't dared to change? Face it. It's your first step to freedom. Take action now. In the next 24 hours, write down one thing you hate about your life now. Work, a habit, a tie. Then picture. Without it, who'd you be? Do one tiny thing toward that new you. Read a page, sketch a line. You'll feel the chains start to shake. Part 5. The power of no. When no becomes your secret weapon. The power you lose. When you always say yes. Have you ever felt like a puppet, strings yanked by every invite, every favor, every chance you didn't really want, just because you couldn't spit out a simple no? I have. It was a Friday afternoon when my boss called me into his office. Can you stay late this weekend? This project's huge. I was wiped out, bone-tired, dreaming of crashing on my couch with a coffee, but I nodded. Sure, no problem. Inside I was screaming, no, I don't want this, but I didn't say it. The cost? I lost my weekend, my energy, and worse, myself. I turned into a guy living for everyone else, not me. Robert Greene, who's turned down tons of juicy offers to guard his purpose, says, no is the strongest weapon you've got, but the hardest to wield. When you can't say no, you lose your time, your spark, your whole damn fate, he tells us in the interview, his voice low like a wake-up call from the grave. Picture your life as a boat. Every yes to something you don't want drops an anchor, and soon you're stuck, not sailing anywhere. Greene doesn't just preach it, he lives it, saying no to stay on course. Do you dare grab that sort of no to cut the ropes tying you down? Or will you stay a puppet in someone else's hands forever? Why we fear saying no, the invisible. Fear Greene gets the power of no because he used to say yes to everything and paid a steep price. Before he hit it big, he bounced through jobs, waiting tables, scribbling scripts, trying to please everyone. I had no direction, he confesses. I let people drag me around and I was miserable. Then it clicked. Saying yes wasn't kindness, it was weakness. Think about you. Why is it so hard to say no? I was scared. Scared my boss would flip, scared my friends would ditch me, scared I'd look selfish. Once a buddy begged, "Come to the bar tonight, it'll be a blast." I hate bars, hate the noise, but I said yes so he wouldn't feel let down. What happened? I sat there grumpy, drained, asking, what am I doing with my life? Greene says, we're terrified of no because we want to be liked. But the cost is, you lose yourself. Imagine you're a tree. Every yes to something. You don't want let someone chop off a branch until you're just a stump, no leaves, no life. Greene shares, people came to me. Robert, do a TV show, make a game, cash in big. I said no, because it wasn't my path. He wasn't afraid of missing out. He was afraid of losing himself. Ever wonder how many branches you've lost because you can't say no? Or do you still think pleasing others is living? The cost of always saying yes. A life falling apart. Saying yes too much doesn't just tire you out. It wrecks you. Greene talks about the offers that flooded in after the 48 Laws of Power. They wanted me on TV and games, all that, he says. If I'd said yes, I'd have been scattered, lost my purpose, maybe never written another book. He said, no. And that's why we've got mastery in the laws of human nature. Books that define him. I felt that wrecking in me. Every yes to my boss, my friends, those pointless invites. It drained me dry. I worked late, hit parties I hated, helped others when I was the one sinking. The result? I was a zombie, snappy, worn out, a stranger to myself. Greene warns, when you can't say no, you're not steering your ship anymore. You're a passenger, swept away by someone else's current. Picture yourself staring in the mirror 10 years from now. What do you see? Someone living their truth, or a worn-out shell, torn apart by yeses that didn't matter. Greene says, saying no guards your energy, the only thing that lets you live real. Ever feel yourself crumbling because you won't say no, or do you still think giving yourself up is noble? The power of no, your secret weapon to take charge, but this isn't about loss, it's about power. Greene didn't just say no to scrape by, he said it to win. When you master no, everything falls into place, he says, voice brimming with grit. You don't have to try so hard, life opens up. Think of Greene. When they pitched turning the 48 Laws into a TV show, he shut it down. I know. Hollywood, he says. I worked there. Endless meetings, no control, fake as hell. I said no because I wanted the reins. What happened? He stuck to writing books, his love, his strength, and built a legacy no one can touch. I took a page from him. One day my boss asked again, you can handle this, right? I took a deep breath, looked him in the eye. No, I need a break. He blinked, surprised, but nodded. For the first time, I wasn't a puppet. I was holding the strings. Greene says no is power. It clears the fog. I don't want this, I want that. I started saying no to lame hangouts, to jobs that didn't fit, and suddenly I had time for me, to paint, to dream, to breathe. Ever feel the rush of no? Or are you still scared it'll cost you everything? When no is your flag of purpose, the strength of no isn't just refusing, it's guarding what matters. Greene shares, I knew what I didn't want, and that's stronger than you think. He turned down TV, games, because they weren't. His goal, writing books, spilling truths about people was. If I'd said yes, I'd have been all over the place, he says. No kept me sharp. I thought about my purpose. I want to paint to tell stories with colors, but I let others yank me away. Extra hours, pointless nights out, busy work. When I started saying no, I clawed back time, energy, my dream. Greene says, purpose is your compass. Saying no keeps the needle steady. I skipped a freelance gig to paint one night, and that canvas became my first sale. No wasn't losing, it was winning. Do you know your purpose, and will you say no to protect it? Tools to say no. How do you wield this weapon? Greene lays out 3 simple, punchy steps. Know your purpose. Ask yourself, what do I want out of life? He says, I wrote it down. I want to paint, to be free. That's my North Star. Weigh the offer. Every invite, ask, does this fit my goal? He urges. I checked. Extra hours don't help me paint. I said no. Say no with guts. Don't apologize, he insists. Say it clear, strong. I practiced in the mirror. No, I can't. First time I said it for real, I shook, but I felt taller than ever. Picture yourself as a knight with a sword called no. Every swing cuts a rope and you rise higher. Greene says, no isn't rude. It's respect for yourself. Ready to swing that blade? Closing. No is your key to freedom. When Greene said no to distractions, he didn't lose. He won. I kept my purpose, he says. That's why I'm me today. You? Dare to say no to save your dreams? I used to say yes to everything until I burned out and lost my way. Now I say no and I live. No isn't pushing others away, it's pulling yourself in. You don't need to master it today, but you've got to start. Question for you. What are you saying yes to that you want to ditch? A job, a tie, a favor dragging you off course? Face it, that's your first step to freedom. Take action now. In the next 24 hours, spot one invite or ask you don't want. Practice no in the mirror. Clear, no sorries. Then say it to them for real. Write down how it feels. You'll taste the power of number part 6, the pulse of urgency. Living like tomorrow won't come. The clock's ticking down. Have you ever lain in bed, staring at the ceiling, wondering, if I die tomorrow, what'll I regret most? I have. It was a pitch-black night after I heard a friend had passed. 32 years old, strong, full of plans, gone in a car crash. We used to sip coffee together, laughing, plotting the future. One day, I'll do this, I'll do that. But he didn't get that day. When the news hit, my heart clenched like someone was squeezing it dry. I looked around my room, the papers on my desk, the dreams I'd pushed off, the words I hadn't said. If I were him, if tomorrow was it, I'd cry, not for death, but for not really living. Robert Greene, who nearly died from a stroke a few years back, says urgency is the heartbeat of life, and most of us don't hear it. I felt death close. He shares in the interview, his voice heavy like it's echoing from the edge. Every day I wake up, I think, this could be my last thought. I've got to live now. Picture your life as an hourglass, sand slipping through and you don't know how much is left. Greene didn't just survive. He lives fierce because he knows tomorrow's not promised. Do you dare live like time's running out? Or will you keep waiting for a tomorrow that might never show? Why we don't feel the urgency. The lie of time. Greene used to think he had forever to chase what he wanted, until death knocked. I almost died in a car, he says. If my wife hadn't spotted something off, I wouldn't be here. That's when I learned. Time's a trick. Before the stroke, he was a busy guy, writing books, making plans, sure he had decades ahead. But one moment, a bee sting, a wrong dose, a slip, and it could have been over. Think about you. How old are you, 20, 30, 40? You figure you've got plenty of time, right? I did too. At 25, I told myself, I'll paint when I've got my job sorted. At 28, a few more years when I've got cash. Then it hit me. I wasn't waiting for the right moment. I was waiting to die. Greene says, when you're young, you feel immortal. You put stuff off, you waste days because you don't hear the clock ticking. I think of those lazy months, binging Netflix all night, scrolling social media, shoving dreams aside for tomorrow. But Greene cuts through. Tomorrow's a lie. You've only got today. He talks about people dying at 30, 40, not from sickness, but from freak accidents, stuff no one sees coming. I read autopsy reports, he says, and I saw nobody's guaranteed a tomorrow. Ever think your time's slipping away? Or are you still living like you've got forever? The cost of waiting. Dreams dying. Slow putting things off isn't just lazy. It's killing yourself bit by bit. Greene says, when you're old, the pain isn't what you messed up. It's what you didn't try. He brings up his latest book, The Sublime, started after he nearly died. I sat on that idea for 20 years, he admits. If I'd died before, it'd never exist. I wrote it now because I know. Time's not waiting. I felt that cost in me. Every time I delayed painting, I watched my dream fade. I'd say, no biggie, I'm young. Then my friend died, and I asked, what if it's me? What did I regret? The paintings I didn't make, the stories I didn't tell, the days I lived like a ghost. Greene says, waiting's slow suicide. You don't drop dead, but your soul dies every day. Imagine you're 60, rocking in a chair, looking back. What do you see? A life lived hard or a pile of what-ifs? Greene shares, I used to swim 3 days a week. I loved it. Didn't cherish it till I couldn't anymore. What are you putting off? A dream? A love you? A move? Do you hear the clock? Or do you still think the sand's endless? The power of urgency. Live like there's no tomorrow. But this isn't about fear. It's about power. Greene didn't just survive his stroke. He roared back to life. I wrote The Sublime twice as fast, he says. I couldn't type quick. Couldn't walk to clear my head, but I had to finish because tomorrow might not come. Urgency turned him into a warrior. Not against death, but against wasting time. Think of his death ground trick from the 33 Strategies of War. When death's at your back, you do the impossible, he explains. I remember deciding to paint again, not for fun, but because I was scared of dying without a mark. I set a deadline, 1 painting in a week. No sleep, no breaks, I did it. It wasn't perfect, but it was mine. Greene says, urgency's pressure. It squeezes brilliance out of you, makes you live. I started living different. Instead of waiting for the perfect time, I jumped in. I called my mom just to say, I love you. No special day needed. I painted every day, even 10 minutes. Greene says, live like there's no tomorrow and you don't have to push. It flows. Ever feel that urgent beat in your chest? Or are you still waiting for someone to wake you up? Urgency's your natural drive. The science behind it, Greene's not just talking feelings, he's got the roots. Our ancestors survived because they felt the heat, he says. No tools, no hunt, they're dead. Urgency's the genius in us. He points to a study. When folks had one shot at a reward, no backup plan, they crushed it, twice as good as the group with options. I tested it. I gave myself 24 hours to paint a picture. No delays, no long breaks. I was beat, but I finished, and it's the best thing I've done, Greene says. No way out, you soar. He talks about Huberman, ditching Stanford for a podcast, no fallback, and he blew up. If he thought, I'll go back if it flops, he'd have failed, Greene insists. Dare to burn your bridges and fly? Or are you still clutching safety net that keeps you grounded? Tools to spark urgency. How do you live with that pulse? Greene gives 3 raw, kick-in-the-gut steps. Face death. Every morning, I meditate and think, this could be my last day, he says. I tried it. Imagine today's the end. What do I want to do? It lit a fire under me. Set a tight goal. Not too big, not too small, he advises. I aimed to paint a small piece every week, tough enough to push, not so huge I'd quit. Cut the safety line. Don't think, what if I fail, he says. I ditched the idea of back to the office if painting flops. One path, I ran it hard. Picture yourself as a soldier on the battlefield. No retreat, just the enemy ahead. You fight like hell. Greene says, urgency's fire, it burns through. Lazy. Ready to light that flame? Closing. Live today, because tomorrow might not come. When Greene nearly died, he didn't panic. He lived. I count every day, he says. Each one's a gift. You? Dare to live like tomorrow's gone? I used to wait, stalled out until my friend's death shook me awake. Now, I paint, I love, I breathe. No more holding off. Urgency's not pressure, it's freedom. You don't need to be a pro today, but you've got to start. Question for you. What are you pushing off? A dream, a word, a step? If tomorrow's your last, what'll you wish you'd done? Face it, that's the beat you need to feel. Take action now. In the next 24 hours, pick one thing you've delayed, call someone, start a project, say, I love you. Set a deadline, done by midnight. No backup, just do it. Write how it feels. You'll taste real living like never before. Part 7, Reading Your Enemy. Secrets behind eyes and smiles. The enemy, hiding behind a smile. Have you ever felt an icy jolt shoot down your spine when someone flashed you a smile, but deep inside, you knew something was off? Like that grin was a blade wrapped in velvet? I have. It was the day a new coworker walked into my old job. He strode in, shook my hand, his smile wide as daylight. So glad to work with you. His eyes sparkled, his voice warm, and I thought, this guy's awesome. But weeks later, I caught him sneaking my mistakes to the boss, grinning at me while sharpening a knife behind my back. I wasn't mad, I was scared. Scared I didn't see it, didn't hear it, didn't feel the enemy standing right in front of me. Robert Greene, who's dodged more snakes than most, says your real enemies don't always wave knives or scream in your face. They smile, pat your shoulder, act like allies. You've got to learn to see through the mask, he warns in the interview, his voice low like a whisper from the shadows. People lie with their mouths, but their bodies can't. Fake it. Imagine walking through a jungle full of predators. Every glance, every grin is a clue. Are you the hunter or the hunted? Greene didn't just survive, he mastered this game. Do you dare open your eyes to spot your enemies, or will you stay prey to those fake smiles forever? Why we don't see enemies. Blind to the mask, Greene used to be naive. Trusting words, buying, smiles, until life hit him hard. Before the 48 laws of power, I had nothing, he confesses. I got played, stabbed in the back, all because I trusted the surface. He talks about his early Hollywood days, sweet promises turning into daggers, coworkers beaming one day and stealing his work the next. Think about you. Do you trust someone because they say, I've got your back? Because they smile? I trusted that coworker, his handshake, his shiny eyes. But Greene says, we're blind because we want to believe. Believe people are good, smart, honest. Because seeing through the mask hurts more. I recall asking him, what do you think of this project? He grinned. It's killer, you're doing great. But his hand gripped his pen tight, his eyes slid past me like I was a roadblock. I didn't see, because I didn't want to. Picture yourself as a deer in the woods. You hear leaves rustle but think, just the wind. Then the leopard pounces, and you're done. Greene says, enemies don't announce themselves. They hide under the skin you want to trust. Ever ignore a sign because you craved comfort? Or do you still think every smile's real? The body's secrets, truth that can't hide but Greene. Doesn't leave you blind. He gives you new eyes. Words are the easiest to fake, he says. But the body can't lie. Eyes, voice, smiles, spill it all. He calls it wordless language, stuff you've got to learn to survive the human jungle. Imagine you're talking to someone. They say, I'm so happy for you. But their eyes don't light up, their voice stumbles, their hands slip into pockets like hiding the truth. That's your enemy, not in their words, but in what they can't control. Greene shares, I've met folks who look at me but don't see me. Their eyes are dead, like I'm a tool, not a person. I think of my coworker's eyes, bright when chatting, dark when he thought I wasn't looking. Greene digs deeper. Science calls them micro-expressions, flashes faster than a blink, but they show everything. I started watching. Once, my boss said, "Good job." But his lips pressed tight, his gaze flicked to the door. I pushed. "You sure? Anything off?" He sighed. "Yeah, fix the report." If I hadn't seen, I'd have crashed. Greene says, "The body's a book. You just need to read it." Ever tried reading that book, or are you still stuck on the words? 3 tools to spot your enemy. Greene hands you 3 keys to pierce the mask: eyes, voice, smile. Eyes, the mirror of truth. Eyes are the hardest to fake, he insists. Dead eyes scream narcissist or liar. I recall an investor meeting. "I'm pumped for this," he said, but his eyes were flat, staring through me. A week later, he bailed. No word. Greene's right. No spark, no trust. Voice. The soul's echo. Even top actors can't fake a voice, he says. A shaky tone, a pause, or 2 slick words, they're flags. I heard a friend say, "I'm not mad," but her voice spiked high, covering something. Later, I learned she'd trashed me. Greene says, "Hear the tune, not the lyrics." Smile, a knife with 2 edges. A real smile warms the whole face, he describes. A fake one's just lips, eyes ice cold. I think of my coworkers, grin mouth up, eyes still. Greene advises, watch the smile, it'll tell you the truth. Imagine you're a detective. Every glance, every tone, every grin's a clue. You'll catch the enemy before they strike. Greene shares, I surprise people, toss a random question, watch that first twitch. I tried it. What did you think of that news? On my coworker. His eyes popped, lips tightened. I knew he was hiding something. Ever use your detective eyes? When the enemy's closest, painful but necessary. The ugliest truth? Your enemy might not be a stranger. They could be your friend, your coworker, even family. Greene says, the ones closest can be the deadliest because you don't guard against them. I think of my best friend saying, I'm always here for you. But when I needed help, she ghosted me, claiming she was busy. I didn't want to believe it, but her eyes dodged mine when she lied. Greene shares, I suspected someone in the office, friend or foe. I caught them off guard, saw a flash of contempt before the smile. I tested my friend, asked something, sudden when she wasn't ready. You okay? Her lips curved, but her eyes darkened. I knew she wasn't real. Greene says, it hurts, but you've got to see the enemy no matter how close. Ever doubt someone you love, or do you still think feelings hide the truth? Owning the game. Read to win. Reading enemies isn't about living scared. It's about taking charge. Greene doesn't just spot them, he uses it. Know who's against you and you control them, he says. You don't react, you steer. He talks about 50 Cent. I hung with him, felt his confidence rub off. I learned to read people so I wouldn't get played. I started doing it. Instead of swallowing my boss's words, I watched. He said, nice work, but his fingers tapped. I fixed my stuff before he asked. With friends, I listened. A shaky voice meant distance. I stepped back before the hurt hit. Greene says, reading's power. You see ahead, you win ahead. I'm not prey anymore. I'm the hunter. Dare to hunt? Or will you let enemies run the show? Closing. Read to live true. When Greene learned to read people, he didn't just survive, he ruled. I see the truth behind eyes, smiles, he says. And I'm no victim anymore. You? Dare to open your eyes and spot your enemies? I was blind to fake grins until I learned to look. Now I see. I know. I live real. Reading isn't doubting everyone. It's shielding yourself. You don't need to nail it today, but you've got to start. Question for you. Who in your life has eyes or a smile you don't trust? When's the last time you felt something's off? And what did you do? Face it. That's how you take charge. Take action now. In the next 24 hours, watch someone you see. Coworker, friend, family. Focus on their eyes, voice, smile when they talk. Toss a curveball question. What did you think of this? Write down their first reaction. The truth will peek out. Part 8. The enemy in your arms. When friends turn into backstabbers. Approximately 6,000 words. Opening. Hook. The blade from the one you trust. Most, have you ever felt your heart shatter into a million pieces when your best friend, the one you bared your soul to, cried with, suddenly plunges a knife in your back, leaving you crumpled in pain and confusion? I have. It was a warm summer night, sitting with my college bestie, laughing, like always. She hugged me tight, said, "I'm so proud of you, you're killing it." I grinned, feeling that glow spread through me. But days later, I found out she'd spread lies about me. Nasty, twisted rumors that made me a joke to our mutual friends. When I asked her, she gave a weak smile. I didn't mean it, just a mix-up. But her eyes were ice cold, and I knew it wasn't a mix-up, it was betrayal. The person I trusted most turned out to be the enemy in my arms. Robert Greene, who's outrun countless frenemies and friends who double as foes, says the deadliest threat isn't a stranger, but the one you hold close. They know your weak spots, they're right beside you, and they strike when your guard's down, he warns in the interview, his voice low like a shadow's murmur. Picture yourself strolling through a garden of bright flowers. You breathe. In the sweetness, trust it's safe, then a poisonous bloom stabs you through the chest. That's a frenemy, and Greene teaches you how to spot them before it's too late. Do you dare look at the ones closest to you and see the enemy? Or will you keep clutching a blade to your chest without knowing who frenemies are? Enemies in friends' clothing, Greene didn't just survive betrayal, he studied it like a scientist. We all have frenemies, he says. They're the ones who act like friends but burn with jealousy inside, itching to hurt you. He traces it back to our roots. Way back when we hunted and gathered, if someone in the tribe got a gift, they'd share it fast to dodge envy, because envy could kill. Even chimps get jealous, he adds. Give the top one a grape, and the rest go nuts. It's baked into us. Think about you. Got someone close, friend, coworker, even a sibling who's all smiles, but you feel a prick when they talk? I think of that bestie. Every time I shared a win, a painting sold, a boss's praise, she'd beam, "That's awesome." But her eyes dimmed, her voice pitched up. I thought, I'm imagining it. Greene cuts in. Nope, that's envy. And envy turns friends into enemies. Imagine you're a deer in a herd. You're fast, strong, but one you thought was a pal quietly nudges you toward the wolf's jaws. Greene shares, the most jealous are the closest. They see you grab what they crave and it eats them alive. Ever feel that prick from someone near? Or do you still think everyone around you's pure? Signs of frenemies. Clues you've missed. Greene doesn't leave you blind. He hands you signs to catch the enemy in your arms. They rush to be your friend, he says. Real friendships grow slow, but a frenemy dives in like they want to swallow you whole. I think of her. Right off the bat, she was too eager. Texting nonstop, begging to hang out, praising me like crazy. I thought it was sweet, but Greene warns, that's envy's mark. They get close to control you, to stab you. Sign 2. Cruel little jokes. They cut you, then say, just kidding, he says. She'd quip, your painting's cool, but no one will buy it, haha. I'd laugh along, but it stung. Greene says, that's not a joke, it's a knife. Sign 3. They're silent when you're down. When I was crushed over a job rejection, she didn't comfort me. She switched topics like I didn't matter. Picture yourself as a detective in your own life. Every word, every look's a clue. Greene shares, my old friends praised me least, they envied my success. I looked back. She never cheered my art, just smirked. Ever miss those hints? Or do you still call them misunderstandings? Why? Friends turn frenemies. Envy breeds knives. So why does a friend you adore become an enemy? Greene's got an answer that chills you. Your wins are a mirror to their flops. He says, when the 48 laws took off, my old pals barely clapped. They thought, he was like me, why's he ahead now? I saw it with her. When I started painting and selling, she shifted, quieter, less smiley. Then the rumors flew. Think about you. When you climb, when you're happy, someone close pulls away. Greene says, envy's a ticking bomb, and social media makes it worse. We compare, we stew, we strike. I recall her seeing my painting get love on Instagram. She didn't like it, but soon after the gossip started. Greene shares, they might not even know they're jealous, but they hurt you to feel better. Ever spark envy without meaning to, or do you still think betrayal's random? Handling frenemies. Cut the blade. Before it strikes, but this isn't about pain, it's about taking charge. Greene doesn't just spot frenemies, he shows you how to deal. When you see them, don't lash out, step back, he says. He recalls, suspecting someone. I caught them off guard, saw the sneer before the grin, and knew, not a friend. I followed suit. When I learned she spread rumors, I didn't fight. I retreated. I stopped sharing, stopped meeting up, and she faded out. Greene says, don't feed snakes in your house, starve them out. He suggests, if they pry, give little. If they stab, don't bleed where they can see. I tried it. When she asked about my latest art, I smiled. It's fine, how about you? She couldn't dig deeper, I stayed safe. Imagine you're a gatekeeper. Frenemies want in, but you lock them out, not with rage, but with smarts. Greene says, they're strong because you're weak. Get strong, they're nothing. Ever put distance between you and a backstabber? Or do you still let them close because you fear losing a friend? Tools to spot and stop them. How do you survive frenemies? Greene gives 3 gut-punching steps. Watch from afar. Don't trust fast. See what they do, he says. I watched her. She praised, but never helped when I was low. Clue 1. Test with a twist. Ask something unexpected, check the flinch, he advises. I hit her with, heard anything about me lately? Her lips tightened, eyes dodged. I knew she lied. Fade out, quiet. No drama, just slip away, he says. I stopped inviting her, slowed my replies, and she drifted off. Think of yourself as a hunter in the wild. Frenemies are snakes. You don't. Kill, you sidestep. Greene says, they're not worth your energy, protecting yourself's enough. Ready to hunt? Closing. Don't let friends stab you. When Greene clocked his frenemies, he didn't cry. He moved. I kept my distance and I lived, he says. You? Dare to peek at the ones close and spot the enemy? I used to hug the blade because I trusted. Now, I see I dodge, I'm tougher. Frenemies aren't the end, they're a lesson. You don't need to master it today, but you've got to start. Question for you. Who in your life shows frenemy vibes? Rushing to bond, jabbing with jokes, quiet when you're down? When's the last time a close one hurt you? Face it, that's how you shield yourself. Take action. Now, in the next 24 hours, pick someone you're unsure of. Watch them talk, eyes, voice, moves. Throw a surprise question. What'd you think of that? Write their first reaction. If it's cold, step back. You'll see who's friend, who's knife. Part 9. Death as your teacher. Living deeper with the sense of fragility. Death. Knocks. Have you ever felt the cold breath of death on your neck, jolting you awake to the truth that everything you hold, dreams, love, life, could vanish in a heartbeat? I have. It was a quiet night, me zoned out on the couch with the TV humming, when my phone buzzed. A friend's voice trembled on the line. He's gone. Car accident. My buddy, 32, fit, bursting with plans, was dead. No goodbye. I dropped the phone, my heart slamming against my ribs, my head spinning. I scanned my room. Papers piled up, a half-done painting. I love you, I hadn't told my mom. If that were me, if tomorrow I stopped breathing, what would I leave behind but a stack of regrets? Robert Greene, who brushed death with a stroke a few years back, says, "Death isn't your enemy, it's your greatest teacher." I almost didn't make it, he shares in the interview, his voice thick like it's coming from the other side. I was driving, and if my wife hadn't caught it, I'd be gone. Since then, I live different, because I know every second's a gift, every day's a miracle. Picture your life as a candle. The flame flickers and any gust could snuff it out. Greene doesn't fear death, he learns from it to live richer. Do you dare let death teach you? Or will you keep acting like your candle burns forever? Death changes everything. Lessons from the edge. Greene didn't always live with fragility in mind. Before the stroke, he was busy, cocky, sure he had decades to write, to live. I used to put things off, he admits. I had the sublime in my head for 20 years thinking, plenty of time. Then I nearly died and I knew, time's not mine to waste. A bee sting, a bad dose, a split-second slip. That's all it took to nearly end him. Think about you. You live like tomorrow's a lock, right? I did. I'd say, I'll paint later when I'm set. Later came and I'd push it again. My friend's death was a slap awake. Greene shares. I meditate every morning thinking, this might be my last thought. What do I want in my head? Petty junk or something big? Post-stroke, he wrote, the sublime like a man possessed, even with shaky hands and no walks to unwind. I count every day, he says. They could run out. I started seeing different. Each morning I ask, if this is it, what do I do? It shakes me, but it makes me live. Greene says, death's a mirror. It shows you who you are. Ever looked in that mirror, or are you still dodging its shadow? Fragility lights up life, beauty in every tick. But death isn't just dread, it's a glow. Greene says, after the stroke, I couldn't swim, couldn't walk far, but I'd stare out the window, see folks doing what I can't and think, they don't know how precious that is. He used to swim 3 days a week, loving the water's hug, but he didn't treasure it till it was gone. Think about you. What do you cherish? I recall morning runs, cool breeze, steady pulse, alive. But I'd grown. Boring, I'll skip tomorrow. Now I'd kill for one more lap to feel it deeper. Greene says, when you know it's fragile, everything shines. The sky's bluer, birds sound sweeter, every breath's a wonder. I tried living like him. One day I sat with my mom just listening to her old stories. Before I'd scroll my phone thinking, dull. This time I saw her, gray hair, frail smile, and knew she won't be here forever. I hugged her, said, I love you, Mom. Greene says, feeling death makes you live deep. It's a lens that brightens it all. Ever savor the small stuff because you know it's fleeting? Or do you still take it all for granted? The price of not caring. Regrets you can't voice. Living blind to death has a cost, and it cuts deep. Greene says, when you're old, you don't regret what you screwed up. You regret what you didn't dare. He talks about childhood. Dreams, writing books, seeing the world, he almost let slip. If I died before the sublime, I'd hate myself forever, he says. I felt that price. After my friend passed, I looked back. I hadn't painted enough, said enough, lived enough. I'd think, I've got time. Greene warns, you don't have time. You've got this moment. He shares letters from fans, desperate because they waited too long. I wanted to do this, but now I'm old, I'm sick. Imagine you're 80, alone, looking back. What's there? A life lit up or a heap of if-onlys. I don't want regrets. Regrets for unpainted canvases, unspoken love, chances I didn't grab. Greene says, death teaches you regret's the real enemy, not failure. Ever think of your regrets, or do you still bet tomorrow will save you? The strength of fragility, living awake. But this isn't about gloom, it's about power. Greene didn't let death scare him. He turned it into fuel. I live knowing tomorrow might not come, he says. And it makes me fierce. After the stroke, he wrote the sublime with trembling hands, a weak body, because if not now, never. I learned from him. Instead of waiting for perfect, I painted, tired or not. I called friends, told my family I love them. No special day needed. Greene shares, meditating, I ask, if I die in 10 seconds, what's in my mind? Not grudges, beauty, meaning. Picture yourself as a flame in the dark. Death's the wind. It could blow you out, but it also makes you blaze brighter. Greene says, and fragility's strength, it forces you to live true. I don't wait anymore. I paint, I love, I breathe. Dare to burn with that fire, or do you still think you're untouchable? Tools to learn from death. How do you let death teach you? Greene gives 3 raw, soul-shaking steps. Face death. Daily. Meditate and think. This could be my last, he says. I tried. Each morning I picture today's the end. What do? It kicks me into gear. Cherish the small. See what you take for granted, he urges. I started tasting my morning coffee, hearing birds, soaking in mom's smile. They're gold now. Now. Don't wait. Do it today, he says. I painted a quick sketch right after the idea hit, no delays. It's rough, but it's me. Think of yourself as a student, death your professor. Each lesson makes you more alive. Greene says, death doesn't steal. It hands you life. Ready to learn? Closing. Let death show you how to live. When Greene brushed death, he didn't weep. He lived. I saw how fragile it is, and it made everything prettier, he says. You? Dare to let death be your teacher? I used to live like I'd never die, until my friend's end woke me up. Now I paint, I love, I live, no waiting. Death's not the end, it's the start. You don't need to ace it today, but you've got to begin. Question for you. If tomorrow you're gone, what'll you regret most? A dream undone? A word unsaid? What are you holding off because you think time's endless? Face it, that's how you live real. Take action now. In the next 24 hours, do one thing you've delayed. Paint, call someone, write, I love you. Picture today's your last, and get it done. Jot down how it feels. Life will light up like never before. Part 10. The game of life. Master the rules or get crushed. Is life a playground or a battlefield? Have you ever felt like a pawn on a giant chessboard, shoved around by moves you don't get, only to fall flat when the game ends, clueless why you lost? I have. It was the day I stood in front of my mirror at 30, staring into my tired eyes after 10 years of grinding, hating my job, burying my dreams, living like a robot. I thought, I did it all right. School, work, following the rules. Why am I still losing? Then it hit me. Life's not a straight path, it's a game, and I didn't know the rules. I wasn't playing to win, I was just trying not to die. Robert Greene, who turned his life from a nobody to a strategy king, says life's a game, not a fun one, but a battlefield where you either master the rules or get smashed. It's all strategy, he tells us in the interview, his voice deep like a general sizing up the fight. You can't just dream or whine, you've got to play, and play to win. Imagine stepping into a chess match. Every move's a choice. Every opponent's a test, and if you don't know the rules, you're toast. Greene didn't just survive, he owned this game. Do you dare learn the rules to win, or will you stay a pawn in someone else's hands forever? Life's a game. The truth. You don't want to. Face Greene didn't always see life this way. Before the 48 laws of power, he was a loser, jumping between jobs, waiting tables, scratching out cheap scripts, clinging to thin hopes. I used to think life was fair, he confesses. Work hard, be nice, and it'll work out. I was dead wrong. Life's strategy, not justice. He learned it through scars. Betrayed, played, ditched because he didn't know how to fight back. think about you. How do you live? I believed if I did my job well, if I stayed in line, I'd make it. But then my boss skipped me for a promotion, handing it to a guy who knew how to sweet talk and grin at the right time. I wasn't mad. I woke up. Greene says, life doesn't reward dreamers or complainers. It rewards those who get the rules. Picture yourself as a gladiator in a Roman arena. The crowd roars, your rival raises a sword, and you've got two paths. Learn to swing or bleed out. Greene shares, I wrote books to see it real, not fairy tales, but how life ticks. He nods to Saul Alinsky, the Rules for Radicals guy. Want change? Be strategic, or you're just pretending? Ever see life as a game, or do you still think effort's enough? What are the rules? Know them to win, so what's the playbook? Greene doesn't leave you guessing. He maps it out. It's about getting people, power, strategy, he says. He talks the 48 laws. I wrote it so you'd see. Folks manipulate, hide their plans, play the game. Don't know it, you lose. Look at your life. Who's gaming you? That coworker who praises you but snags your credit? Friends who promise big then vanish? I think of my boss saying, you're my go-to guy. But when the project tanked, he pointed at me. Greene says, Rule 1, don't trust the surface. People wear masks. I learned to watch. His eyes darted, his fingers tapped. I knew. He was lying. Rule 2, keep your cool. The unstrategic are fools, Greene says. They react, they rage, they fall. I used to snap at my friend when she badmouthed me. I yelled and lost her. Greene advises, step back, think, then move. Next time a coworker trashed my painting, I smiled, fixed it, sold it. Greene says, rules are tools. Use them, you win. Ever play by the rules, or do you still let feelings steer? The cost of being clueless, crushed in silence. Not knowing the rules has a price, and it's brutal. Greene shares, the clueless do the most damage, not the evil, but the ones who don't plan. He points to politics. They moan, they fume, but do nothing. They lose. I saw it in my life. I worked my tail off, but didn't shield myself. I got sidelined, forgotten. Imagine you're a lamb among wolves. You're sweet, you're good, but you can't fight your lunch. Greene says, don't play, and you don't just lose. You fade away. I recall passing up a chance to push my idea. A coworker took it, and I was left with zilch. If I'd known the rules, I'd have won, I thought. Greene warns, naivety's suicide. No one saves you but you. Ever pay a price for not playing, or do you still think life will pity you? Mastering the game, the power of strategy. But this isn't about losing. It's about owning it. Greene didn't just scrape by, he triumphed. When I got the rules, I stopped being a victim, he says. He talks the 48 laws. I wrote it as your shield. You see the game, you play it better. I took his cue. Instead of grinding blind, I got strategic. When my boss asked for extra hours, I didn't just say no, I said, I'll do it if it's worth my while. He blinked, then upped my pay. Greene says, strategy's power. You don't react, you lead. I started painting not just for kicks, I sold them, built a name. Picture yourself as a general on the battlefield. You don't run wild, you plan, you strike, you win. Greene shares, I said no to TV shows because I knew that's not my victory. He played to hold his purpose. I'm not a pawn anymore, I'm the player. Dare to grab the pieces, or will you wait for someone else to move you? Tools to play and win. How do you master the game? Greene gives 3 raw, kick-you-awake steps. Learn the rules. Read people, read power, he says. I watched my boss, my friends, who's real, who's fake. I saw ahead and moved first. Lock down feelings. Don't snap, think, he urges. When I got slammed, I didn't yell. I grinned, fixed it, came out on top. Make small moves. Don't need a big win yet, start tiny, he says. I sold 1 small painting, then grew. I stacked wins step by step. Think of yourself as a chess player. Every move's a plan. You don't need to checkmate now, but you've got to start. Greene says, play the game and you live real. Don't play, you're crushed. Ready to make your first move? Closing. Master or be crushed. When Greene cracked the rules, he didn't just live, he won. I saw life raw, and I owned it, he says. You? Dare to play life's game? I used to be a pawn. Now I'm a player. I paint, I fight, I live. No one's bailing me out. Life's not a road, it's a board. You don't need to be a champ today, but you've got to start. Master it or get crushed, what's your pick? Question for you. Where are you losing in life's game? Work, dreams, ties? What rule haven't you learned to win? Face it, that's your first step to owning it. Take action. Now, in the next 24 hours, pick one spot you're stuck. Job, friends, a goal. Make a small move. Say no, try something, watch someone. Write what happens, you'll feel the game start to shift.